Hi, solopreneur. Welcome. The quiet calm and confidence that radiates from Lauren Joyce when she talks about building a business with God is very inspiring. In this week's episode, she references her faith-based approach to being a solopreneur again and again. This is her favorite quote. You can't get lost in the kingdom. Wherever you go, God is with you. But this health and weight coach for Christian moms also gets into the nitty-gritty of business building in this interview. For instance, she shares how she's grown her podcast from an average of 20 downloads per week to almost 150. And you will be motivated to hear it took Lauren only a few tweaks to get there. Enjoy. Who is Lauren Joyce? Please tell us about yourself and also the work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi. So good to be back with you, Risa. I'm excited. Um, about me, who is Lauren? I am a wife. I am a mom of boys. I have two young sons. I am an entrepreneur. But most importantly, what I like to say about myself is that I'm a Jesus-loving encourager. That is probably the core of who I am. I love for everything that I do to point others back to Jesus and encourage them in their walks with the Lord. So, and then as far as the work that I do, I started my business a couple of years ago. But ultimately, I'm just really passionate about helping Christian moms break free from diet culture so that they can experience this true confidence and live as the women that God created them to be. Because I believe that you really can live empowered and healthy, and that it can be enjoyable and fun. I know that so many women are caught up in that overwhelm and the feelings of burden that can come from trying to live healthy, specifically the world's way. But I believe really when you invite God into your health journey and you seek Him first, even in how you eat and how you move your body, like you can not only become the healthiest version of yourself, but you can also live more freely in the calling that God has on your life. So all that to say, like, obviously most of that passion is coming from me having lived it out, right? But I'm also like from working in the fitness industry and just seeing how broken really this world standard of health is, and how distracted we can get from God by focusing so much on making ourselves look a certain way or feel a certain way. So that is probably me and what I do in a nutshell.
Okay, and where do you live?
I live in Kansas, Wichita, Kansas, the middle of the country.
Okay, right smack in the middle. Okay. So speaking of, your business, tell me a little bit about the results that you create that really fire you up, that gives you so much joy and energy when you get those results.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I kind of mentioned this before, but really like what fires me up the most is when I am able to help women deepen their relationship with God. And so, my work with clients, and even just hearing from those that follow me about how their relationships with God are changing as they focus more on Him, like through their health struggles, like that's really ultimately what brings me the most joy, when I'm able to see women set free from really the spiritual weight that maybe they've been carrying that will ultimately end up leading to physical changes. But when I'm able to kind of see God get a hold of their hearts, is really what lights me up.
So. But it's like the spiritual weight. It's like that dropping it. That's a beautiful picture. Okay. So here's a hard question, especially for Christian women. What do you love to do? So it's actually, I want to know, what are you, now the next question is, what are you really good at? But this is, what's your passion? What's easy for you? And what do you love to do about, being a coach and helping people?
Yep. Well, my initial response to that is it depends on the day.
Oh yeah, typical. Yes.
Because I'm a woman after all, right? But as I was thinking about this, I'm a really driven person. I'm very goal oriented. I love pushing myself to do more, to do better, to challenge myself. I love being challenged. So it's so funny, like I'll have, different friendships, and even my husband, I ask for them to call me out on things because I don't want to just be comfortable and complacent. Like I want to be challenged to grow.
Okay.
And that pre my relationship with God really got me into trouble because, I'm pursuing all of these different things that the world is saying. And now I kind of have this God filter, I like to call it, where everything that I am driven towards, all these goals, like I am first and foremost seeking God and what it is that he has for me. So, yeah, I'm like referencing my notes a little bit here because I wrote down some cool things, like to be more specific. So goals for me could be anything. Like I like to call myself an exercise enthusiast.
Okay.
I love setting different exercise goals. But it could be like prayer goals too. Or something like that. I'm always just looking for ways to challenge myself. I went, as an example, like last year I trained for a marathon and ran a marathon, my third marathon. And this year
I'm very impressed. I would never be able to do that. So yes, good for you.
But again, that same concept, like I just wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. But this year it's weightlifting. So I've gotten really into weightlifting, and, I was a personal trainer prior to starting an online business. And so I kind of have that knowledge base, but because I was training for my running goals, I never really spent time seeing what I could do lifting weights. And so now I'm like, well, I'm going to do that for a little bit. And, I don't know. I'm just a problem solver. I love puzzles and critical thinking and things like that. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It's a great answer. So, okay, now for that hard one. For a Christian woman asking you that, what are you good at? What are your talents? And especially if you can speak a little bit about, being an entrepreneur, what comes easy for you?
Yeah. So one of the big things that I've noticed in myself, probably over the last 6 months to a year, is that I am really good about seeing like the big picture of the outcome and then breaking it down into like a step-by-step path to get there, like understanding and seeing smaller steps and being able to kind of orchestrate how to accomplish that. Now,
that is so helpful for a business owner. That's a great talent to have.
Yeah. And of course, it's the how can be using people or things, right? And, I think I have a passion for people, and God's kind of using me in different ways inside the church for that. But, outside the church, it's using, different pieces of technology and you just what is available that I can use to kind of put into place to help me get to this big picture outcome. So I would say, yeah, that's kind of one piece that I'm really good at. And then expanding on the people side, like I like to think that I'm really good at gathering people. Like that's just kind of, I love it when people come together for common goals or purposes. But like not necessarily to all do the same thing, but to like play their own role at it. So yeah.
Okay, so great skills like to have as a business owner. Okay, now we talked a lot about you, and often when we train people to start their own businesses, it's like we are taught focus on the client, what's their need. It's not about you. But do you think it's important as a business owner that you also bring into play your own talent, your own passions, your calling? And how do you balance that almost? I think that's my question. Focusing on the client, but also on what you want to do. How do you do that?
Well, to answer your initial question, like I absolutely think it's important that as business owners, we think about what it is that we have to offer. What are our passions? What are our talents? What is our calling? Where is that calling coming from? And then looking at how can we make a business out of that, right? A lot of our talents and our passions are going to come from our own experiences, our own story, but also God created us uniquely with these things. And so I think, the way that I've walked it out in my life is really just seeking him and asking him, like, what What does he want to use me for? What does he want to use the things that he's put in me for? Because I think that's ultimately what allows me to have an impact in the world. So I think
that's such a good perspective. It's like it starts with yourself, and then you think about other people. Don't, sometimes it's just like, this is what the market needs right now, but probably it's not sustainable to have a business in that way. If you are doing things you hate, you're not good at, but this is what the market wants. So it's like, really I think you are very wise there by starting with yourself.
Yeah.
And then how can I serve other people? Having
Right.
servant's heart.
Yeah. And I think if it's okay, I'd love to share kind of a little bit about my journey. I don't know if we're going to get to that at some point, but it kind of fits in here. So when I started my business a couple years back, I felt like God was calling me into coaching. And I came from the fitness world. So I did the personal training, and I kind of had an idea what working with a client would be like, but I didn't really know specifically coaching. I didn't know online business and all of that kind of stuff. But I felt like he was showing me things in my life about my health that I had gone through and teaching me these things. And he kind of spoke to me and he said, okay, I want you to put all these things together and teach it to people. And I was like, okay. And so I did. I spent probably 3 months lining everything up. I typed everything out. I'm kind of a perfectionist. That might be a negative for me.
Imagine what you said before, that strategic mindset, that you can see what the step, how to take it apart and put it together again so that other people can follow. I can just see you use that talent. Okay, but I interrupted you. Please go ahead.
No, you're fine. But that's exactly what happened. Like, I kind of saw this big picture outcome. I didn't really know the particular steps, but I kind of just went one at a time and I laid it all out, and I wasn't looking at who I was going to serve. I was saying, this is what God's put on my heart. I'm going to type it out, and he's got someone out there that needs to hear this. So once I had that already, it was like, okay, well, now what do I do? And that's when I started getting into kind of that business coaching world. Like, how do I market? How do I find my clients? How do I speak to my clients? Like, it's interesting because in working with different coaches, they all talk about like finding your avatar, your ideal client, your perfect fit client, like the one person that you can help. And I'm sitting here like, I get from a marketing standpoint that I have to talk to one, because if I'm trying to help everybody, I'm going to help no one. Like, that's the common marketing phrase, right? But the reality is that my program could help anybody.
Okay.
But because of the marketing piece, like, I've had to adapt how I talk to my audience, right? Does that make sense?
It does, totally. Yeah, I get that.
And so it's just interesting to kind of bring it full circle and see, I went through all of these things, and God's kind of given me these passions, these messages to share. And now I'm in the process of saying, okay, how can I apply this to the particular client that I want to help? Which in this season that I'm in, it's Christian moms mostly of younger kids who are kind of in the nitty gritty and overwhelmed by health. And, so I've discovered who I can talk to right now. But it all started with me and what do I have to offer?
Okay. So if you are comfortable with this, could you share a little bit of your success? How many clients do you have? Just what you are comfortable with using this philosophy almost, this approach. How successful are you? Is it working?
Yes and no. So it's been an interesting journey. I'll just start with that. Like, it did take, as any entrepreneur can attest to, it takes time sometimes to build your audience, to learn how to market yourself and to learn how to sell. Yes. And so it was probably a solid 8 months before I got my first client. And then for probably the last year, I was fairly regularly bringing on clients. So my program that I was doing, I was coaching one-on-one. It was a 12-week program, give or take a week. And so, I was bringing clients regularly into that. I think I had 9-10 clients throughout that time. And it was awesome. Like, I loved serving clients. And then over the last couple months, God's really been calling me to a pivot in my business, actually. So I am in the process of developing an online course, which of course has no success right now because it's not ready yet. But so in pivoting to that, I stopped taking one-on-one clients.
Okay, but that must have been scary, right?
Terrifying, absolutely terrifying. However, it's been confirmed so many times that this is what God has told me to do that I'm just like, all right, God, like, you brought me my success and my clients, and you told me what to be doing for the last, couple of years in my business. Why would I stop trusting you now? And so it's interesting that you asked that question, because right now my success looks like nothing, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes. And I have this in my notes for one of your questions later, but I'll mention it now anyways. Like, honestly, when it comes to entrepreneurship, like, what I've learned is that it's more of a spiritual journey than anything. Like, I have grown more spiritually, I think, than any other area of my life, because there's so much to it.
Yeah, business building is it's equal to character building. It's the same thing. It's like
absolutely.
You have to work on yourself so much, and that personal development that's happening, and the spiritual growth, even a closer walk with God. It sounds like, but it's materialistic. It's about money making. No, it's not.
Nope.
Do you agree with that?
Yes. And the sooner you come to that realization, like, the easier it'll be.
Okay, the next question, it's like, you can think about the new phase or the old phase. What is a big problem that you solved in your business, and how did you go about that?
So, I mean, again, my initial response is like, the biggest problem I solved was how to start a business.
Okay, if you want to go with that one, because many people they want to do it, but they are scared or they are overwhelmed or whatever. So if you want to go with that one.
So honestly, I mean, when I started this, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know what an online business was going to look like. I didn't know how to coach. I didn't know who I was going to serve, or how to find those people, or like how to have people pay me for my services. I didn't, and that was everything from the marketing to like the tech side. Like, how do I set up a website? How do I, do a Facebook Live, or how do I start a podcast? Things like that. And so the way that I solved that is going through a long season of following and hiring business coaches who taught me and led me in a lot of different directions. And I learned, I learned just about everything that I know about my business from one of these coaches, which is a blessing. Like I said, I learned the tech stuff, the marketing side, how to create these programs and courses. But more than that, which I don't think I necessarily would have known on my own, we kind of touched on before, like this character building, this mindset work that comes with doing business. I don't think I ever would have realized how much personal growth and mindset work I needed to do in order to see any success in my business and keep going, right?
Okay. Now there's a car going by in my street. Can you hear it? Is it picking up the sound? Okay, no problem then. Okay, so that's the big thing, is the mindset, but it's like problem of the problem of the problem. And the one thing that I'm hearing is you didn't wait till you know how to do it before you start doing it. But sometimes you just have to jump in and make a mess and do it. Do you agree?
Yeah. A lot of people will call it like taking messy action. Or I had one coach one time who said, sometimes you just have to do the thing, freaking out afraid, is what she used to say.
Yeah, just go ahead and do it. Okay, social media. Let's talk a little bit about, I think that's a big one for many new solopreneurs or entrepreneurs. What advice would you give to someone, the social media monster? How do you tame that thing?
I don't think it can be tamed. I'll start with that. I think it can be a blessing and it can be a curse. My kind of biggest piece of advice for anyone starting out that is looking at using social media as a tool in their business is to seek God and what He wants, and not to make social media the idol. Because I think a lot of times we can get caught up in I have to do this. I have to post X number of times a week. I have to, message everybody. I have to send out 100 friend requests a day. I have to do all of these things. It's all about the numbers, and I got to play the algorithms and all of that. And I think it's important to have a plan and a purpose, but I think it's equally important to remember that it's God who ultimately will do the thing, right? Like it's about your willingness and your obedience is what I've discovered. So when I started my podcast, I essentially got off social media. I was kind of doing both for a while, but social media exhausts me. It can be mentally overwhelming, especially for a new solopreneur or entrepreneur, because it's the same thing. Like I compare it with diet culture. There's so much out there. And so you have all of these voices suddenly that are speaking into your head, and what I ran into is I was using Facebook to try and reach my people, but I was also using Facebook to find the coaches that I wanted to, give me advice in my business. Right. And so there's just this clash of worlds happening in front of me, and I couldn't keep everything straight. Like who is a potential client and who is just, leading me into something in my business, and should I listen to these voices or should I listen to those voices? And it just got all cloudy. And when I was able to step away from social media and just say, okay, I'm going to post when God puts something on my heart to post, and focus on my podcast, there was so much freedom that came in that. And I felt like I could more clearly, hear and see where God was leading me through all of it. So.
Okay, so let's talk about your podcast now, because it seems like a good segue now. It's like, how is that different from social media?
That is a fabulous question. I don't know if I have a great answer to that. The one way that I've heard it described from the coach I actually hired when I wanted to start growing my podcast more, was that people are going to Facebook to connect, right? And or numb out. Like they're not looking for help. They're not looking to face their problems. They're not looking for solutions. They're not looking to be sold something. Like they're on Facebook to connect with people and get updates about people's lives. Like that was the purpose of it, right? Whereas podcasts, a lot of times you're going there because you have a problem that you're looking for a solution for. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so when someone goes to a podcast, they're looking for encouragement in a particular area. They're looking for guidance in a particular area. They want truth spoken into their life. That's the purpose of them going to listen to this podcast, right? And so I think that's probably what I would say is the biggest difference.
Okay, so how long have you been podcasting?
This will be 8 months in December. So.
And give us some details. Are you happy with your results? How often do you do it? How the day-to-day of running a successful podcast? What's some of the tips that you can give other people?
Sure. So I'll throw out my podcast. It's called Healthy and Empowered Living.
And we will put it in the show notes. It's like you can go listen to Lauren's wonderful podcast.
So I'm super proud of the results. Like I said, I hired a podcast coach to help me with that organic growth side. So there's kind of it's again, like I mentioned before, when I was starting a business, like there's just some tech stuff I didn't know. And so having someone come along and tell me like, this is how you can set it up so that people can find it easier. I'm like, great, let's do that. So I did that. And so I was on my own for 4 months. I do weekly episodes, which I'm super proud of myself. I've not missed a single week. I publish an episode every Monday morning. And it's one of my favorite times.
That's great. That's like amazing that you could keep it up, because it's like every week. And when do you like work ahead of time? Do you stack it? How do you do it?
So it just kind of depends. Like for instance, this week I recorded my Monday episode on Sunday afternoon.
Okay.
But I went on vacation for a couple weeks in November, and I took most of November off, and I had recorded all of those episodes and had them scheduled out.
Okay.
And so it really, and again, that's the beauty of podcasting, right? Like you have the option to just schedule them out and have them published whenever, and you can brainstorm and you can record way ahead of time. Or I had an episode that I was sitting on for a while that I didn't record until 3 months later, or didn't publish until 3 months later. It's like sometimes God just leads me in a different direction for that week, and he's like, no, I think you should share this instead. And anyways, that's kind of a side note, but yeah, so I was doing my own thing for a couple months, and I think I only had a couple hundred downloads, which was great. I was averaging maybe 20 or so listens per episode, and I was like, oh yeah, that's really good. Like I know I'm not really doing anything to promote it. I'm just putting an episode out. I have an email list that's really small, and I was putting it on Facebook. And then, I started focusing more on or this organic growth of the podcast, and how do I describe my podcast and explain what I do using the description, and make it more searchable so that more women can find it and know what it is they're going to get. And so I started doing that, and now my podcast episodes average 100 to 150 listens per episode. I'm about to hit like 3,000 downloads, which in a matter of 8 months was like huge for me. I'm getting almost 1,000 downloads a month. And again, I'm not doing anything special. I added some words, and I'm showing up every week.
Tiny tweaks. Sometimes it's like tiny little things that's easy to do that can make a big.
Exactly. And if I were on, go ahead.
Did you hire a coach? Or was it just like you just find someone out there and follow their free advice? Did you hire someone, and would you advise that?
I hired someone, and yes, I would recommend hiring someone if you feel like you want to fast track your results and have like you're in a place where you're like, I just need to know how to do what it is that I need to do. Mm-hmm. I think there is a time and a place for kind of stepping back from having like a coach or a business mentor, so this is kind of the season that I'm in right now, after finishing up with that podcast coach. Like I'm seeing all of this growth, and she gave me so much to do that I'm just kind of in this season of needing to implement all of those things and like watch the
consolidation of all the knowledge and all. Yeah, right. By bringing it, I can just imagine.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's a season of, I just need to implement and do the things now. And in order to do that, I needed to take a step back from having someone speak new things into me. Right.
Okay. But that you have that as self-awareness. I think that's a good tip. Yeah. Anybody out there hearing that? Sometimes you get things in, but you have to like process it and make it your own and not get new information in all the time. Yes. Good Absolutely. One. Good one. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about your hunting trip that I saw on Facebook. That's very interesting. So this is just a little bit more personal. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. My husband is an avid hunter, mainly waterfowl, although he's getting into deer and turkey and whatever else. I don't know. It's not really my thing, but he loves it. And so ever since we had sons, he was really excited about being able to bring them out with him and kind of share with them what hobby he loves. And so right now, at the time of this recording, my boys are 6 and 4. So kind of just old enough to go and watch. They're not really participating. And so my husband was going out, and this was the first time he was going to take them both. And he wasn't going to have anyone with him. And I I looked at him and I just said, you don't have to be afraid to ask me to go. Like, if you think you might need help having 2 kids there, buy water.
And you want quiet, I suppose.
Right. If you want them entertained, if you want to actually be able to hunt, don't you don't need to be afraid. Like, I'm happy to come. And so he was like, yeah, would you want to come? And I was like, sure. And so, we went, and it was such a fun time. I mean, it was just our family, and my kids are at an age right now where we're just so enjoying being around them. They're just so much fun and interactive, and their personalities are developing. And so, yeah, being able to go out and just be together as a family. I mean, we love the outdoors in general. And so even though it's cold and, you have to keep kids really quiet and still for long periods of time, like it was, it created memories that I will never forget. So.
But you think that kind of freedom, to do your own thing, is that also why you have your business?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I wouldn't have the bond that I have with my kids right now if I didn't have my own business and have set these boundaries for myself where, I work when they're at school and I do not work when they are home, period, end of story. Like, I just don't. And that's a boundary that I've set for myself and for the sake of my family.
The season you are in, this is like they need you after school, and you decided good for you. Okay, yeah. So any business advice? What's the best little bit of business advice you ever got?
I mean, that's really hard because I've gotten a lot of advice over the years. So I would say my go-to answer is do business with God.
Okay.
That's for me what has worked the best, is seeking him first and letting him lead me. I kind of mentioned earlier, like, I've discovered that it's such a spiritual journey and a personal growth journey and character building and all that kind of stuff. Like, it is so much more than how much money your business brings in, right? So that's something that keeps me grounded. I would say the best thing I've heard from a business coach, her name is Monica Spate, that has really influenced a lot of my decisions in business and yeah, just kind of how I seek God and his direction for my business is, and she said, you can't get lost in the kingdom. Wherever you go, God is with you.
Oh, that is so precious and empowering.
Mm-hmm.
Can't get lost in the kingdom. Okay, that's a good one. Okay, final question. How can people connect with you? Where do they find you?
So obviously I hang out on my podcast most.
Yes.
I mentioned before, but Healthy and Empowered Living podcast, you can check that out wherever you listen to your podcasts. But I also have a free Facebook community called Joyful Health for Christian Moms, where we really, it's kind of an iron sharpens iron kind of community where we all just support and encourage each other, and we're able to kind of just share where we're at, where we're struggling, what's going well, what's not, just be each other's arm bearers. And so that's the one place I do hang out most often on Facebook. But yeah, I'd say those are probably the best places to connect with me.
Okay, we will definitely post the links. Thank you so much, Lauren. This was fun. I enjoyed getting to know you better.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on, Risa. It's been a pleasure.